you all. So yesterday we started that is so the topic that was about the non-random mating was started in our previous class. So those are non-random mating that was mainly helpful for the the non-random mating that phenomena, that process was the mating process was occurred in the middle of the closely related organisms. So in the middle of the within the population, the fertilization, the mating process was takes place in the inside the within the population, that is nothing but the non-random mating. So that that was completed in our previous class. Today today we are going to discuss about the so that was mainly about so in your first unit, so the first those topics are left. So we are completely, but how to write? That is the main topics. So those are nothing but the wildlife conservation and the wildlife sanctuaries and the national parks and the biodiversity and biodiversity hotspots and the endangered fauna and so the population growth curves are also there in these and the ecological succession ecological adaptations and so the pollution. So these are topics are completely involved and comes under. So these are topics were completely about the your second unit. So how to write totally these are dry topic. So is there. So about the so second unit. So first of all you are having in your syllabus, that is the population growth curves are there. And you write how to write the population growth curves. So in these the most important questions in these second unit that was mainly about the main and so main topic, that is about the first priority goes to, that is the wildlife conservation. The wildlife conservation is a very important essay in your second unit. So one by one we are going to discuss gradually what are the important questions from the each and every unit. First we are start, that is about the second unit today. That is totally about the wildlife conservation is there. So these are wildlife conservation is a very important essay now. So in your second unit, so without these question, there is no question paper, that others That is the importance of these questions. The wildlife conservation. So the wildlife conservation, how to write. So these question in your final examination point of view. So it is an important question. So wildlife first we write about the, so what are the important acts or implemented for wildlife conservation? The Elephant Act, Crocodile Act, Tortoise Act and the Tiger Protection Act. So these are the different acts are there, and the Wildlife Conservation Act in 1972, the Environmental Protection Act are there, and the Pollution Prohibition Act is also there. So these all are after and may goes to make the great impact on the wildlife. The wildlife organisms are how to conserve the wildlife organisms, that is the wildlife conservation in India. So first of all, you write all the acts which are implemented, and so those are you can so completely write. So first, so you define the wildlife conservation and what is mean by wildlife. Non-domestic animals are considered here as a wildlife, and how to conserve those organisms. How to conserve? So those organisms are mainly, so the conservation of wildlife. So the patterns of wildlife conservation. The patterns are so today we are going to discuss about the gradually, so one by one. So how to write about the wildlife conservation in India. So first of all, you write so the how to conserve the wildlife in mainly the non-domestic animals. First you define the word the wildlife conservation. Then only you write the different acts are implemented clearly. So with the ear, so including the ear. So different organisms are there, and their protection acts are also there. So you can clearly mention those each and every protection act. So in the wildlife conservation in India. After that you write so and how many species are left, and how many vertebrates are so remained in our India, and how many fish population is there, and the amphibian population, and the reptile population, and the birds population, and the mammal population. So you write the number, that is so the amphibian how many species are left at 20,000, and the reptile population up to the those are 16,000, and the bird population that was also less, so up to 10 to 15,000, and the mammal population. So you can mention these so leftover the population which are remained in India, and so you can clearly write about the so different organisms, and then only you write the first the organism protection acts, and clearly mentioned that was comes under totally the wildlife conservation in India. And after completion of that, so another topic, that is the national parks in India and the wildlife sanctuaries in India. The national parks are also there, and the wildlife sanctuaries are also there. Those are the safest places for the protection of different types of the animals, different types of the organisms. Why? Because so those are endangered, now in endangered condition. That's why so the government was made the different types of the acts for the protection of those such organisms, and for the protection from the so the those become from the extinction, so they may not be going to be extincted. So to overcome that problem, to avoid that problem, so the vulture population, different types of the organisms are now in endangered condition. So those organisms are those should be protected by ourselves. Then only that is the main aim of the national parks and the wildlife sanctuaries. First you write what is the main usage by these national parks and wildlife sanctuaries in India. So what is the concept of wildlife sanctuaries in India? So you also defined that, you also so that information, and so the usage of wildlife sanctuaries, and you list out the wildlife first one by one the national parks in India. First you list out one by one national parks in India, and then after you also list out the wildlife sanctuaries in India. So then only, so that was completely the wildlife sanctuaries and the wildlife national parks in India. So that was the complete information about the total sanctuaries and including their area, and the sanctuaries, the name of the sanctuaries. So the Gir National Park is there, and different types of the sanctuaries are there, and most of the sanctuaries and national parks are available inside the Karnataka state and Kerala, and also the UP and MP, Madhya Pradesh, and some are there in the Himachal Pradesh also. So in these you can able to write the list of the wildlife sanctuaries and so national parks in India. Then after you write the the biodiversity hotspots and the endangered fauna. So if the question is came, they asked to write so write about the wildlife conservation in India. Then you also included to write the wildlife conservation and the national parks in India, wildlife sanctuaries in India, and you also include the biodiversity hotspots, endangered fauna. Then only you got the 20 out of 20 marks. Now because that is an essay question, so by that reason, so you write only so what is the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks, then you may not be got the full marks. You also included to write the biodiversity and the total entire topics, then only why because it is a complete dry topic, there is no diagrams are available for this topic. That's why you write the clear information, then only you got the full marks. So that's why you write the total information about the biodiversity, also the biodiversity hotspots in India and endangered fauna. You also list out the endangered fauna in India, then only you got the full marks for this. So those are endangered fauna. So what are the threatened organisms? The Indian bison and so the Nilgiri tiger. So those are the different types of the organ, and the macaque, and these are now in endangered condition. Such organisms are protected now, but so those are so if the perfect protection is not there for those organisms are completely going to be extincted. So to overcome the problem, so now those are in so endangered fauna in threatened condition. So that is a very problematic conditions are there for those such organisms. And the main reasons you also mentioned, what are the main reasons are there for the extinction of the organisms, and the pollution, deforestation, global warming. So you also include that information. You also define those such definitions, and for the what are the reasons for endangered fauna, you list out the endangered fauna. Before you list out the endangered fauna, you also define what is mean by endangered fauna. So what are the causes for endangering the species? So that is the main importance for that. So by that reason, what happens is the endangered fauna is mainly helpful. So those are endangered fauna you list out, and the reasons you also write the reasons for endangering, and so deforestation. What is mean by deforestation, and what is mean by so some other reasons. So what are the another reasons? And deforestation, pollution, global warming. So these all are the and man-made activities. So the man can kill the different types of the organisms for their personal use and commercial use. Different types of the elephants and lion and the tiger, deer population. So those are mainly with the help of man-made activities. So by the reason most of the organisms are going to be die, and some of the organisms are in now endangered condition. The man is also one of the reason for the deforestation is one of the reason. Removing of the forest area and the reducing of the forest areas is also one of the reasons, and the global warming is also one of the reason, and the pollution is also one of the reason. So due to these reasons, the organisms are now in endangered condition. You clearly mentioned that. So what is mean by so what are the reasons for endangered fauna? Then only you list out the endangered fauna. That is the complete information about the wildlife conservation and the endangered fauna. Now comes to the biodiversity and the biodiversity hotspots in India. Biodiversity. Biodiversity means different organisms are live together in an ecosystem. That is the microorganisms and the larger organisms, animals, plants. So all are live together. So these are variation, different types of living organisms. A variated living organisms are considered as biodiversity. So those are biodiversity, a plant population and animal population, and hotspots So those hotspots are mainly so the Himalayan regions. So they may contain the hotspots are there. So those hotspots are mainly 4 hotspots are available in our India. So those are mainly helpful for they may contain such a high amount of the mountain area and a more amount of the forest area. So that's why those are considered the hotspots in India. So you also mentioned so those are 4 hotspots in India. So why they are important? So you can able to write why they are important in your examination, and so what are those areas you also clearly mentioned, and how is so the forest area, how the spreading area of the forest area available for those regions. You also mentioned that clearly. And then we also write about so those hotspots and hotspot available fauna. So those organisms may accommodate different types of the organism, plant population, animal population. So that's why so what is those are important, and clearly mentioned biodiversity, how many species are available, and how what are the different species are available in our India. So those are completely comes under biodiversity. So then you write if the question they ask to write biodiversity, then also you write the biodiversity answer, and biodiversity hotspots in India, endangered fauna of India, wildlife conservation of India, national parks, and the wildlife sanctuaries. So so those are you can able to write in these way also. So biodiversity question, and otherwise they asked wildlife conservation, and so endangered fauna. So then you should write these are total so information, then only you got full marks out of 22. So 20 out of 20. So that is the total information. And next, so the population growth curves is there. The structure of the community, and the ecological succession, ecological adaptations, and the pollution, and the patterns of ecological succession is there, and the population growth curves are also there. And again in these two, the pollution you can able to write so you blindly write what is mean by population, what are pollution, what are the types of the pollution, what are the causes for pollution. So you blindly write so do you ignore that? Why? Because so you have I think you have that a complete grip on the pollution question. So you completely ignore that. Why? Because so you can able to write the pollution question generally answer, and the remaining you concentrate on the ecological adaptations, ecological succession, and population growth curves. So remaining these 3 topics, another important question is the structure of community, and ecological succession is a very important essay than the wildlife conservation. So in these unit, the wildlife conservation is a very important essay. After the wildlife conservation, the remaining important question is that is ecological succession is a very important essay. The ecological succession, that is the construction of the structure of a community. The structure of community, so those are completely an ecosystem that was mainly contained the producer. So that was ecological succession was nothing but so gradual development after the after completion of a natural hazards, then the population was completely removed away from that particular area. So by that reason, those particular area was again reconstructed itself. An ecosystem again reconstructed itself, so it can able to repair itself. That is considered as ecological succession. So those are completely 2 types are there. One is a hydrosphere, another one is a xerosphere. The hydrosphere was the complete development inside the water ecosystem, and the xerosphere is a complete development on the rock ecosystem, the rock area. So it is a main variation is there between those two. How the rock areas are developed, and how the water areas are going to be developed. The water, the area of the water, how those are developed. So from the zero stage to the development of the higher plants, higher tree stage, that is also considered called as the water hydrosphere area. So you can able to draw the diagram, and you write the so each and every stage, and that is so different stages are there. That is a submerged stage, and floating stage, marsh meadow stage, reed swamp stage, climax stage, pioneer stage, and after that the final climax, that is a formation of the larger plants. So larger trees are formed finally, that is a complete development of the hydrosphere. So if the water media, the depth of the water is there, those water media was going to be reconstructed that animal fauna along with the plant fauna. So plants were firstly formed producers, then only the organisms that was the finally the blue green algae, and so the other organisms which may depends upon the blue green algae. Those are some euglena like primary and so invertebrates are developed at there. So those are the protozoan organisms are developed, and gradually that was give rise to different types of the plants. So that was floating submerged completely. Some of the plants are completely dipped inside the water, and some of the organisms, some of the plants are so their roots are inside the water and their leaves are on the surface of the water. Those are completely comes under the floated plants, and so gradually so the plants are completely the shrubs and herbs stage is also formed finally, that gives to form the final developmental area, the larger trees that was completely so by the larger trees are occupied that area. So now the larger trees occupied area was so the final stage of the development of ecological succession at there. So those ecological succession at the water area in the hydrosphere, and after completion of the bare rock area, so the rock areas are also going to be developed. How the so any earthquakes are like natural hazards are leads to remove the total animal fauna, plant fauna from the particular area. So by that reason, again the rock areas are also reconstructed themselves. The rock areas are not suitable for the living of the any other plants and animals. Why? Because the rock areas may not be helpful for the deposit of water or any other soil area. That's why that area may not be helpful for the living of the organisms. Gradually that was also used to develop and reconstructed to convert a forest ecosystem. So from that was started from the bare rock area, that is a xerosphere. These two are considered the ecological succession. It is a very important essay. And so these are the xerosphere, that was the bare rock area. Firstly primarily the lichens are formed. So we already discussed in previous class what is the mean by the lichens at the animal associations. We have completed the first unit, animal association. One organism depends upon the another organism for the food and shelter. So for the reproduction purpose. So one organism make the help to the another organism. Both are helpful. So by that way, the lichens are formed. That is a fungi and a blue-green algae completely converted to the lichens. So those are made. It was permanently so the mutualism life. So that's why so the lichens are firstly primarily formed in the bare rock area, but in the hydrosphere the pioneers, that is the initiator organisms are producers. Those are the blue green algae and those are the producers there, and the producers inside the bare rock area are the lichens. So the lichens are furtherly give rise to different types of the organisms at there. Why? Because if the lichens are developed, then what happens is so that was those organisms are used to dissolve the rocks. They can able to dissolve the rock area. So if the rock area is dissolved, then what happened? That was pores are formed on the rock area. Those pores are again used to so those are helpful for the absorb the water movement. So those can squeeze the water. Those are used to squeeze the water. So these are so the squeezing mechanism. So by that reason the soil area was developed. If the water depositions are developed at that area, that was helpful for. Why? Because these lichens and the lichens are different animals are also formed. Those organisms which are going to be depends upon those lichens for the food and shelter. So those organisms are so after the completion of their lifespan, all the organisms are going to be die. Then what happens is if the organisms are going to be die, then the humus is formed. That humus is nothing but so the soil area. If the humus is nothing but the dead and decay organic matter, that was after completion of die, decomposers are developed at there. Those are decomposed, and those did not decay organic matter furtherly converted to a useful nutrients with the help of these other decomposers. By that reason, that was helpful for the soil area was developed. If the soil area was developed on the rock area, then the water depositions are developed at that area. Then gradually smaller plants are developed at there, and furtherly shrubs and herbs are also developed at there. The creepers and the smaller plants are developed at there. So immediately the salamander or the different types of the arthropod organisms are developed at there. So those organisms are depends upon the food for the particular the plants and other organisms. So in these manner, those organisms are going to be die. Again, the rock area was completely penetrated, and that area was the rocks are completely going to be dissolved. Then immediately, so finally, gradually, the rocks are converted to a useful nutriented soils. So the soil area was spreading that area. When the soil was the earth region become so increased, then that was used to helpful to capacity for restoration of the water in the rainy season. Then the groundwater levels are also increased. Those ground level waters are helpful for the strengthening of the roots. So by that reason, the rooted plants are also developed at there. A larger trees are developed at there gradually. So the higher organisms are also developed at that area. And so after completion of the lifespan of those higher organisms, all the organisms are going to be die. So after completion of the lifespan of the higher organisms, the human that was a area was again converted to the decomposers. Decomposers are going to convert that into the so useful dead and decay organic matter into the useful nutrients. That was helpful. So gradually the bare rock area was useful and converted to a useful area and become a forest area completely. That is the development of bare rock area and hydrosphere from the water media. So completely these two are concerned the ecological succession. It is a important essay in your second unit. First important question is wildlife conservation biodiversity, and the second important question is the ecological succession. After completion of this, so the population growth curves are also there. That is also important for the small. That was a short answer question. The population growth curves. You can able to answer that because the population growth curves are J-shaped curve and sigmoid shaped curves or S-shaped curves are also there. So those growth curves are mainly helpful for the so they can represent a graphical representation of population. So that was mainly considered as a population growth curves. So if so those are complete information. We got the complete information about the growth curves. So how the population range and what is the annual population, what is the number of the plant population, what is the number of the microorganisms in a unit of area, in a unit of time. That was mainly clearly mentioned in the population growth curves. So you can able to write what is the mean by population growth curves and what are the types for there for population growth curves. So you draw the graphs and clearly write about the population growth curves about that, and about the types are also you clearly mentioned that. So, so the pollution is totally about the second unit, how to write and what are the important questions in the second unit. So we are discussed today, and so furtherly on the next class we are going to discuss about the another new topic, and so today's topic is completely over. That is clear information about the second unit and the important questions and how to write the question answers, and what are the important questions are also completed in the previous in this class. So this class is completely over. So we'll meet with a new topic. Today's topic is over. We'll meet tomorrow with new topic. So today's topic is over. Thank you.